Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 115, Pursuing New Opportunities. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network, also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart app, Audible, Amazon Prime Music, and now in the Morristown Beard Podcast Library, only alumni can access it. Big day today, Nick. There's a lot going on. We are going to have a special guest from the Broadcast Podcast, Sam Chang. No relations to me. I know we have the same first name. That's okay. But yeah, Nick, how are you, my friend? You're back at home, and we're streaming live right now.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was pursuing new opportunities. I was putting out some resumes, looking out at some other things and looking at some opportunities down in Newark and pursuing them. And the alert on my phone, Scott O'Neill is pursuing other opportunities, hence the title. And there's a vacant position right now at Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, how do I apply for this? Do I just go to LinkedIn, or is this one of those weird Facebook applications, or do they want me to send a letter? I was watching Friends the other day, and when Rachel left Central Park, she just had to send a bunch of letters with a resume on it. I know the address to the Prudential Center. Do I just send a letter? Do people send letters anymore?
You know what? I'll tell you what. You just gave me a foolish idea. I think I'll send my resume. I've been talking all 3 months, 4 months. I want to buy the team. Hey, you know what? I'll send in my resume to that job. CEO of the New Jersey Devils. I'll outsource the Philadelphia Sixers. I don't care about that, to be honest. I'll outsource it. Somebody can be under me, and I'll be like, all right, just make sure the team's not losing money, so we can siphon up the profits and spend on this team called New Jersey Devils.
We will make an empire. I will negotiate the selling of Crystal Palace. You can take control of the New Jersey Devils. Once we sell that Crystal Palace team, I will come. We will work in syndication. And then Beer Baron will come. We'll put Beer Baron Shorts guy on the 76ers. And then, Scotty, maybe does he want that little Steelers part? Is that something? Do we have to do anything with that?
Good point. You know what? Divest, sell. We need to raise some capital and put some more stuff at the Prudential Center.
We'll make Scotty in charge of new ventures. How about that?
Yes. You're talking about Scotty, a Sirius XM liquid metal?
Yeah.
Hey,
sure
you know what?
I
would have him DJ, play music during warm-ups from the confines of his own home in Beverly Hills. That's what I would do.
Yeah, he probably doesn't want to leave Beverly Hills, California. But let me be serious for just a second. This is weird. They just talked to him on Monday, and they advertised the heck out of it. He was pretty candid on Monday, and about things that not it wasn't an I'm about to get fired kind of candid. It was more I want to get the fans excited candid. I want to do something this offseason. And of course there's the fans we got fired for it. He didn't say anything worth firing him, but he said they were going to spend, they were going to get talent in here, they wanted to win, things that maybe it was just pomp and circumstance or whatever, and it didn't really mean anything, but it's the things at least I want them to say. We haven't heard the owners say something like that since they fired Ray Sherrod. We want to win now. It's well, I don't know if now is the time to win now, but I do want you to do something. And they made a couple moves that would have made them better in the standings. it was miraculous how all of their moves from last year did not work out. But I think that also had a lot to do with the pandemic and Corey Crawford retired and everything like that. But again, they tried. I have no problem with what they did last offseason. They brought in assets and they didn't spend a lot on any of them. You know what I mean? Like a 5th-round pick for Ryan Murray, great. Joey Anderson for Andreas Janssen, great. Corey Crawford on a free agent deal, great. Like, and then just let the young kids roam. And they did. They evaluated it correctly. Those young kids were ready. Those young kids, like, imagine if, like, the one who was like, well, maybe he could have done this, like, gotten the same progression in the AHL. Somebody like Mikhail Maltsev, who got a lot of games. But Michael McLeod, like, him not being in the NHL last year would have been really bad for his development. Nathan Bastian, again, really bad for his development. Now put him in, and Sharon Govich and Kokinen are a little more obvious. But, and you had to see what you had in Boquist. You had to see what some of these other players are going to do, whether they were going to step up or not. And,
well, I'll tell you what, Nick, before I get the next guest on, you know what? It's like I was actually starting to write that blog for Pucks and Pitchforks blog, and I only completed 3 sentences, and it was like, Scott O'Neill says we have the green light to spend. Well, I was going to write about, well, you have to spend because most likely you're not even at the floor, the cap floor. And secondly, now I have to, crumple up that blog because now Scott O'Neill's not even there. Those words mean nothing to me now. Nothing. So it's so hilarious.
Maybe that's what you should write about. You should write about why those words mean nothing now.
Yeah, it means nothing now because I'll tell you what, and I'll save it for the blog because now the creative juices are going. Before I get Sam on, I got to get this off my chest. It's like, I'm not going to speculate if he knew he was leaving or not, or was it one of those PR spin moves like, hey, they went into his office, confiscated his cell phone, saying, hey, we'll pack up everything. You're out of here, escort the building. I don't think it was that dramatic, but, it happens in corporate America, right? Because we are a hedge fund. If he knew, man, is Scott O'Neill a great pump faker? Because he had me pump faked. He's like spending money, and I'm like, well, you have to spend money anyway. Especially a PK is Seattle Kraken. You got to make up
PK
for that.
Gets taken.
Yeah, so,
PK.
Anyway, I'm going to get our next guest. Talk to social media. Right now, it's humming right now on Facebook Live and YouTube Live.
Oh, yeah. Listen, here's the thing, is that we've heard all the rumors. Everybody tied John Chayka to the Devils when that situation with Arizona kind of fell apart and he stepped down. I'm not saying that the two are together or tied, but I'm also saying that I'm keeping my eye on that because something's weird here in the terminology that they used. That Scott O'Neill was leaving immediately, but then he was also helping find the successor. It was very strange. Craig Best in the Facebook Live is rooting for Montreal. I got the game up. It was 0-0. Montreal's killed 2 penalties. That's going well for them. 0-0 is, if I'm Montreal, I'm really happy. Randy, I don't know what you were implying when you said, is that possible? I don't know which part is possible, but listen, the Devils are in a situation where they can have a huge offseason and they have all the assets there. They have all the tools. Their tool chest is stacked, locked and loaded. They have salary cap space. They have young, tradable assets. A lot of them are signed to contracts already. You don't have to worry about them staying overseas. But then you have the other ones that are really good overseas. Artem Slaying, his name's escaping me. The guy who played in the World Juniors for Russia. But I digress. There's a million reasons why the Devils could be big this offseason. And I don't mean big like stupid moves, big free agency deals. I don't think they're going to do anything in free agency, specifically because of that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins deal. 8 years and $41 million. Get out of here. Those aren't the type of moves the Devils are going to make right now. But they're going to make smart moves. They're going to bring in talent. And all I want from this team is for them to be fun to watch. Sam, you're back.
Are you talking to me or the other one?
I mean, this is what it's very
rare.
We're gonna have Samception right now, where I'm gonna try to talk to you, but like I'm gonna talk to the guest, and it's going to be interesting. We're gonna have to see how this goes.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm excited though. I've been excited about this all day. I really do love what these girls do. I don't like how much Twitter hate they get. I feel like I need to like scream at a lot of Twitter people, but I just don't have that kind of.
I'll tell you what. Sometimes I get Twitter hate. Sometimes I get YouTube Live hate. And you know what? Haters are going to hate. Yeah, and haters are going to hate. It's part of the it's part of the the gig sometimes. But you know what? They're very good, and that means people are listening and watching, right? So that's always a good thing. She is the co-host of the broadcast. Her name is Sam Chang. You can find her on Twitter at SamanthaCP_. Sam, welcome to the podcast. You're on with Sam and Nick. How are you?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, no problem. I've been, we've been interacting on Twitter for a while. I interact with a couple of the other co-host of the broadcast. I've always wanted to have one of you on. I was trying to figure out the right time to do it. I figured while we're watching Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals with two competent teams, it would be the perfect time to have a Vancouver Canucks analyst come on to talk to a New Jersey Devils analyst, and we can both just cry together.
That's perfect. I mean, every day of being a Canucks fan involves crying.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll give it to you. Y'all have it worse than us. And not right now. Your team is probably a little bit better than us just in terms of talent. And, you did get Pettersson while we got Heischer, so that gives you a little bit of a leg up. But we're both in a very strange position franchise-wise. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the broadcast because I love this thing. I love the concept. I love the execution. I love everything that you ladies have done with this property, building it from the ground up, from nothing into a powerhouse in the Vancouver Canucks conversation. And that's what I try to explain to people all the time, is that literally all these mediums are for is to create conversation. You've created buzz, and you and these ladies have created buzz. So, first of all, I want to ask how you got involved. You're a lawyer, so how do you get involved in a hockey Vancouver Canucks or a hockey-centric podcast at all?
I am a lawyer. I started tweeting regularly about hockey kind of, I think around November of 2019 now, like right around the time that Don Cherry made those comments that got him fired. And kind of started becoming a more active participant in what we refer to as Canucks Twitter. And from there, I met a couple of the other ladies who are on the broadcast over Twitter. And what happened was when Brendan Leipzig's DMs got leaked, a couple of us had a group chat going where we talked about how we didn't think that the coverage of the topic by mainstream media and kind of existing podcasts was to our liking, in the sense that it was very much centered on like a male fan's perspective. And we didn't really see anything out there that we identified with in terms of opinions coming from women hockey fans. So we originally kicked around the idea of doing a blog and decided that writing is a lot of work. And so that idea we kind of just brushed aside. And then eventually landed on the idea of doing a podcast. And that's actually how it started.
That's super interesting. And so let me ask you, I mean, you said you listen to the podcast, and I've learned a lot having this medium. I've been doing podcasts for a very long time, on and off. I've been writing for over a decade. So I do know writing is an annoying amount of work sometimes, but the benefits do sometimes outweigh the stress and the work. But I do want to ask you, I want to know, because I talk to a lot of people online, and I kind of get a sense of what I can do better, but talking to people like you who have a voice and got her own voice because of people not doing enough. So what could some of these outlets do more? Like, do we need to put more female voices on, or do we need to personally try to, report or analyze these stories better, or both?
I think it's both. I think that, one of the episodes we did back in February was on coverage of sexual violence in sports. And we talked to Jessica Luther, who's an amazing journalist, and learned so much from her about the way she's studied and trained to address these issues and to treat survivors with respect and to really tell their story in a fair way. And I think anyone who wants to have a podcast and to create your own platform, regardless of the size of it, I think it's important to be fair and representative in telling the stories and in talking about these issues. So I think it is incumbent on people who want to do that to learn about how to improve. But I do think that obviously representation matters, and having women on shows, having LGBTQ plus people on shows, having disabled people on shows, and giving them a platform and a voice is equally important, because as much as we can try to talk about issues that implicate all of these groups, it's always better to hear firsthand from somebody who lives that experience.
And honestly, I'll be honest with our audience. I'll be honest with you. I didn't understand that for the longest time. The longest time I was like, yeah, I'm sure it's harder for such and such and so, but I don't want to, I think, I know my thought process was, well, I don't want to lose my opportunities to give them to somebody else. But I've learned over the years, and I've learned, through friends and through outreach. And honestly, I work at, my day job's in the news. So I'm a news producer, and the things you have to learn to do that job correctly is you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people who are going to watch you. And honestly, like, if you don't understand these things, and I'm talking to the audience, I'm not talking to you, Sam, but if anybody in the audience doesn't understand how that works, then you should outreach. Or there's so many mediums right now. There are podcasts, there are other forms of media that you can use, and it's important. And I didn't understand that. And as someone who didn't understand it and now understands it, I think that it's vital that you give these things a chance. You give people who maybe you wouldn't normally listen to, read, watch, a chance, because the importance that they bring to, people who wouldn't watch hockey otherwise. I'm sure, you've probably heard people say, I've listened to your podcast, now I'm more into hockey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you, as somebody who's kind of undertaken that journey, what I've found with the broadcast is kind of the more we represented these issues and wanted to have people on to talk about them, the more our platform actually grew, because more people saw themselves in what we were talking about and wanted to be part of it. And I'm just wondering, in your experience, once you started doing that, did you find that, you were actually connecting with more people?
I absolutely think that I learned how to write and speak towards more people in this, but I also think that we did grow. I'm gonna be honest. We lost some at first when I started to speak about these things, and you get that initial drop because I would say a lot of the people either come here for an escape or they come here for, or maybe they don't believe in those views. Maybe they don't in whatever. Like my personal views, I don't want them to listen to me anyway. But anyway, but they either always come back or you get more people who appreciate that enough to listen or to read, for in my case, the blog. So I do think that while I was on that journey, I was trying to not make mistakes, and you still make mistakes as somebody who's, it's like with any journey, you make mistakes, you try to, and I feel like a lot of people are afraid to make those mistakes. Like I remember one thing that I really regretted, and I can't ever use this audio ever again because I made a stupid mistake, but when the Devils drafted Shakir Mukhamadullin, I made fun of his name. That was really stupid. It was something I did. We did a live podcast, and I did something dumb. And then I apologized for it later because I was like, that was dumb. Why would I make fun? He can't control his name. Why would I do that? Why would I start my relationship with this player? So it's things like that. We can't be afraid to make mistakes because you're going to do it. But it's about recognizing them, and then it's about moving forward and then maybe learning from them. Somebody like Bill Simmons, who's somebody who I've listened to for a long time, he had a podcast with another white male, Ryan Russillo, and they talked about how great they are at putting minorities on his team. And then everybody's like, nah, dog, you're not really that good at it. But he learned from it. And now he's reached out to have more, African Americans and people of Latin descent and more women doing things. And that's, we have to learn from those people who are making positive progress.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think one of the really interesting things is, and this is probably because I am super snarky, like that's actually just my baseline. I think people when they read my tweets think that I'm expecting perfection from everyone. And I actually don't think that's realistic. I totally agree with you. I think people make mistakes. I've made mistakes. And the important thing is being willing to listen to people who are calling you in and explaining to you why what you said is problematic and learning from it and becoming a better person. I don't think anyone is going to be perfect all of the time. Exactly.
And I think that's how you learn is don't be afraid to be perfect. But I do want to go back to the broadcast, and I do want to, it's an important podcast, but it's fun. I love it. I listen to it when it seems, not terribly Canucks related, and you have a lot of those guests. I remember when you got Roman Josi, I believe it was a couple of months ago, and that was huge. But building it from the ground up, something to be super proud of, and it's hard to do that. You started in 2019. There was like 3 billion podcasts at that point. What is some advice that you can give to our audience who are like maybe intimidated by the market, but they think that they have the talent and they feel like they could find that niche audience?
To be honest with you, I think it was a little bit, we got lucky with the timing. We were all fairly active on Twitter at the time. I think what's really worked for us is we put a lot of thought into what we wanted the show to feel like. And for us, the idea was always centered around having people feel like they were just eavesdropping on a couple of friends talking. And my favorite feedback is when people tell us they're having fun and it feels like they're hanging out with their friends. And so we've really committed ourselves to doing that. And, I think it's pretty obvious, like we're all pretty unapologetically ourselves, and we're okay with that. And we know it's not everyone's cup of tea. We know there are people who don't like it, and that's totally fine. I think the most important thing when you're doing a show, at least the way it's worked for us, is as long as everyone involved is having fun. Like, that's not to say it doesn't work. Like, we put in a lot of prep work every week, but if you're having fun and you're kind of being genuine to yourself, I think that comes through and people like that.
Yeah, I do. I think it's the reason why me and Sam have become popular at all, is because we pull the curtain back. We don't pull punches, and I think that your podcast is very similar in that way, where you're not walking on eggshells. You're just saying what you feel, saying how you feel about a situation, and you'll deal with whatever repercussions there are to that later. Speaking of repercussions, that's what we call a professional transition there. Let's talk about the Canucks, because they're interesting, I would say. They had some hopes this season after making the playoffs in 2020. They did not live up to those hopes. There wasn't a lot of terrible losses. I know you lost Markstrom, but you replaced him with Holtby, so it seemed like you could at least fill that void there. First of all, what do you think went wrong with the Canucks?
That is a very big question. I know.
I should have given you that heads up. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'm going to start with, I actually think the expectations people had of them coming out of the bubble were fairly unrealistic. I think that people, because of the success they had in the bubble, people forget that they were like an at best average team during the regular season before COVID hit and everything stopped. Like they had a great start because Markstrom was playing out of his mind, and then he got injured and Demko was playing, and notwithstanding that Demko found his game in the bubble and he was amazing, the last 10 games before everything was suspended, the Canucks were on a losing streak and they were on a downside and they did not look good. And I think the reality was they were always a bubble team and they were pushed into the playoff bubble because of the performances of their goaltenders. And I think coming out of the bubble, they did very little to address that. They lost the goaltender, and thankfully, Markstrom had a down year and Demko had a great year, and he looks like he's going to be a bona fide starter, which is fantastic. But they came into the season with essentially 3 NHL defensemen. Like they had Quinn Hughes, Tyler Myers, and Nate Schmidt. And after that, the drop-off was enormous. Like they were relying on rookies coming in, and they were relying on Jordy Ben, and their blue line is still a train wreck, and there's not a whole lot you can do because they spent $26+ million on their bottom 6 and they can't afford to do anything else. And so everyone's like, well, you've got all these great rookies coming in and it's going to be fine. Well, it's fine to the extent that the rookies are okay, but anyone who thinks that that's a good plan, I have a bridge to sell you.
Listen, can I get some profits if you sell it to one of our listeners at least? Some profit sharing over here. All right, so let's talk. One of the reasons why I love just talking to Canucks fans, and you don't fall into this category, but the best was when we were hearing the fake trades for Jack Hughes when we had the number 1 overall pick, and it was like Hulevi and our 10th overall. That should be plenty. They need this, they need that. It's like, So now the shoe's on the other foot. The Canucks are in a bad way when it comes to the salary cap. Like you said, they spent quite a bit on their bottom 6, and it's not even like the best bottom 6 in hockey. And they have it's about $15 million in salary cap space, and they have to sign Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson. I thought there was somebody else. Well, you just basically just need to fill the rest of the roster, and I just don't think that's enough money. So, can we have Quinn Hughes?
I think you're going to end up with Jack. Isn't 2 out of the 3 enough?
Yeah, it's fine.
Luke.
It's just
you're going to end up with Luke.
Yeah,
I was
Luke.
like,
I knew what you meant. But no. But how does Vancouver figure this out without having like you said, they don't really have. They have Tyler Myers, who I don't think is very good, but some people really like him. So sure. Nate Schmidt is obviously good, and I don't know. Everybody else is a free agent. So what happens here?
I think the rumor is that they're going to end up signing Quinn to a fairly long contract, which is fine. They're going to end up signing Elias Pettersson to a 3-year bridge deal, which, it's not the end of the world, but in my opinion, when you have a player the caliber of Elias Pettersson, you want to lock him up and buy as many of his free agent years as possible. They can't afford to do that because they didn't do any planning for the last 3 years. But they're going to do whatever it takes to have those two signed, and then it's just going to be plug in the rest of the holes however you can, which is why I think they'll be fine, because I think that's how good Pettersson is, but I don't think they're going to be good or serious contenders in any way.
So, hold on. I just went up the wrong thing. All right, so Quinn's probably not getting traded. You can't afford it, but you have to make some moves. The Canucks have to figure out the salary cap situation. The Devils are here. We have all the salary cap in the world. Is there somebody on the Devils that intrigues you that you'll be like, oh, like if we trade this person and we get these assets back, is there somebody that's, obviously besides Jack and Nico, but like, is there a realistic trade here, do you think?
To be honest, I don't actually want the Canucks to really trade for anyone at this point. I think what they need to do is kind of bite the bullet and just have a couple of bad years, unless they're trading out bad contracts for like picks. I don't actually think they can take back any players, and I don't think they should.
That's fair. There's obviously a couple players that are interesting, but you have all these like young players who aren't young anymore. Like these.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. I don't even want to bring up Virtanen because of because of the situation that he's in. Obviously, he's not negotiable. But like, when did Tanner Pearson become 28? Like when Brock Besser's going to be 25, Bo Horvat is 26, going on 27. This team got old very quickly.
I know, and everyone, there are a faction of fans here who are super pro-management, who consistently say, well, they've built a great young core, and they have, but the NHL itself has gotten younger, and people are like, oh, the Canucks are 2 years behind the Colorado Avalanche. Well, the Avalanche's average age is actually 2 years younger than the Canucks. The Canucks' average age right now is 27, and the Avs' average age is 25. So to the extent that people are thinking that, I don't know that that's actually very realistic, so much as that's what people are telling themselves to feel better about the situation.
All right. So before I let you go, you're a lawyer, so you give advice for a living. You fight for people. You kind of alluded to what you want the Canucks to do this offseason. It sounds like it's mostly stay put, fill out the roster, kind of bite the bullet for a year while you get some of these contracts off the books. You're looking at the Devils roster. Put on your lawyer hat and tell me what advice would you give them going into the offseason? Free agency, the expansion draft, the NHL draft is all about the ramp up. What do you think should be their goal?
I think the Devils have actually done a decent job drafting. I think you've got another great pick this year. I honestly think patience and not spending just because you have the cap space now would be my advice. If you look at Colorado, people say if you have cap space and you're not spending to the cap, your GM's not doing it right. Well, up until this year, Joe Sakic hasn't spent to the cap in years because he knows what's coming. And so I think having a long-term plan and being able to stick to it matters a lot. For the Canucks, I think my advice is have a long-term plan because they haven't had one until now, and I still don't know what their plan actually is.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head, though, when it came to, like, management. And I've seen so many more pro-Jim Benning people than I ever thought that I would.
It makes no sense. It drives me insane.
He got his guy Tyler Myers, signed him up, and I honest to goodness, they've made some decent draft picks. They got a good core, but that core is like in a spot where it needs to win now, and you need like Hoglander to become a superstar to the level of Pedersen, because that's what you need. You need top level talent because you got like pieces. The pieces are there. So I don't know. But Sam, this is a lovely chat. I really appreciate you coming on. I want you to plug all your stuff. When does the broadcast go into podcast feeds? Where can people find you? All the good stuff.
Awesome. You can find us on Twitter at BroadcastPod. We record on Wednesdays, and the podcast gets dropped every Friday, and it's available anywhere you get your podcast.
Got it. And you've had great guests in the past. I remember the Yossi. You've had a couple others. It's just I have trouble keeping track of everybody. But, I'm sure the summer is going to be very good for you. And honestly, misery loves company. We're pretty miserable over here in New Jersey when it comes to our hockey team. And Vancouver, let's all be miserable
Constant
together.
Misery. Absolutely.
Cheers
Love
to
it.
misery. But Sam, thank you so much for coming on. Very important conversation. I appreciate it. When I need a kick in the butt, I need somebody to tell me how to progress these rough waters, I'll have you back on.
Sounds great. Anytime.
That is Sam Chang of The Broadcast. You know what? Back in '94, I shared their same misery as well with Vancouver Canucks fans.
Yeah, that was sad. They were the last. What is it? The last hurdle to that. I hate the Rangers so much.
Oh yeah, but
yeah.
You know what? I love Vancouver when they poached Mark Messier out of New York in '97.
Pretty great.
Oh my goodness, that was the best.
They hate that. They hate Mark Messier for that. But and I believe weren't they? They were terrible with him, right?
Yeah. I mean, towards the end there, and then Messier's second tour of duty with the Rangers. I mean, the Devils were just slapping him around back then. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah, just awesome. And you know what? Most people forget. Rangers fans forget that Messier in the second tour of duty. And I actually I think I still kept it. The New York Post or the New York Daily News headline that says, Messier predicts we're going to make the playoffs, and then and they didn't make the playoffs for a few years towards the end there. So, hey, if you make 10 predictions and one comes true, suddenly you're a genius in New York.
One of the best articles I've ever edited that one of my guys have written was by Mike Lucci, and he dug in to the greatest rumors that have ever hit the New Jersey Devils. He wrote about that famous rumor about Mark Messier getting traded to the Devils. Do you remember that? When everybody thought that Messier was coming here?
Vaguely. Remind me the time period.
I think it was when he was in Vancouver. And they were talking.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
And Lou Lamoriello was really trying to get Messier. I think maybe that was when he got Mogilny instead. I'm trying to remember that part of it. But I think it was around there, 99, 98, 2000, somewhere in that range. But imagine that. I
remember that.
Imagine Scott Stevens handing this cup to Scott Niedermayer. He hands it to Brodeur, and then Brodeur gets the smirk on his face over in the NJ crest. Former Rangers captain Mark Messier. Here you go, buddy.
I remember at the time. Now it's coming back because I was in college at the time. I remember that rumor, and I remember telling myself, we don't need him. We can win on our own. We're not like them, meaning the Rangers. So, although I remember I wouldn't say it was really a rumor, but there was a suggestion, it may have been Rich Chair, I forgot, of Gretzky making a trade for Gretzky, but he eventually went to St. Louis, to add some offense and bury the whole Mickey Mouse organization thing. Maybe it was Larry Brooks. I forgot who suggested that. And, again, What do we need Gretzky for? I mean, at that time, what? Star power? And then we got Doug Gilmour. Didn't last long. He went for the bigger contract, the Blackhawks, but yeah. So brings out the old days. But hey, just want to get back to our earlier conversation. Who's going to fill the CEO position of the Sixers and Devils CEO Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment? Where do I send my resume? We should flood them with resumes.
I'm telling you, just send them all. Just every day. We'll send one from me, you, Scotty. Maybe we'll send some of the listeners, Matt Junio, Mike Rossi. Where's David Decker? David Decker, come back on so I can send your resume for the CEO.
Hire. Do you know who they should hire? Hire Sherry Ross. Be the Devils CEO. She knows her stuff.
She knows hockey. I don't know how much she knows basketball, but I mean, they should hire Sherry Ross for a lot of things.
Yeah, I know.
I think a lot of people. I think that's like a $2 billion asset for them.
I'll tell you what, and this is in all seriousness. I had a conversation with Hugh Weber early on when they bought the team, and he told me that they consider themselves as a content company. All right, content, rights to the games, all that kind of stuff. They do Chris Westcott, and Amanda Stein. They do some wonderful things. Matt Lachlan, Chico, wonderful things behind the scenes.
If you're Chris
a content
Westcott,
company,
friend of the podcast.
Yeah, maybe Chris Westcott should be CEO of the New Jersey Devils.
There we go.
Wouldn't that be something? We would have an in. We would totally have an in. Or maybe Amanda Stein. She's from Montreal. She knows hockey.
Yeah. We wouldn't have an in with Amanda Stein. She's never been on. She's an open invitation. But we need a friend of the podcast.
Hey, she's a busy lady.
Give them Bryce. I want Bryce for CEO. Give me Bryce
CEO?
Salvador for CEO of the New Jersey Devils.
Erica Wachter. You know what? If she was CEO of the Devils, she can explain all the stuff that goes on very well. Like she'll have a pregame message.
And she knows about working in a newsroom and working. I think a newsroom mentality comes in handy in a lot of other jobs that are not even journalism adjacent. A lot of business jobs. I feel like having that mentality really helps. But there's a lot of people. Matt Junio wants Melanie Hunter and Tyler Barrett. Matt Junio is just name dropping people, just trying to get them in.
Who are they? Who are they?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Matt Junio. Who are they? One is verified.
Oh,
she's a Sacramento traffic anchor. I don't know the point of that. But anyway, we're moving on.
Oh my
goodness.
Sam,
I do want to take a quick second to thank the fans. Because, we talked about traffic slowing down a little bit, and it is what it is, but Sam, we did 341,000 page views this month. We're going to get very close to 350,000 page views on Pucks and Pitchforks. And
wow.
I have to thank the audience. I have to thank the Devils fans. And, oh, boy, do I get a lot of hate for a lot of these things. But I could care less. Line in my pockets with your tears. If you hate me, if you love me, which a lot of you do. A lot of you have come out and said very nice things. And a lot of you follow me because whatever. I don't know why, but you like me. You really like me. And to see the thirst the Devils fans still have for content on this team, you see it. It's still there. People are excited about the offseason. This team just wants to have something to be excited about. We don't want to keep talking about, how do we get out of this trade that didn't work out? How do we replace this guy who got fired or who stepped down? How do we, I don't want to keep replacing people. I want this to be an organization that people strive to come to. And they've already started that I think that there's a foundation here that I think players are going to really notice, and it's a popular take that the Devils have two amazing centers who are here to build around, and they're both very young. I think people are taking notice of that. I think people are going to want to build with us. And I know the Dougie Hamilton thing is like a long shot, but I don't think that we're out of the question. I think there's a lot of things to like about this. And obviously we have the money. There are some smart moves to make. Duncan Keith just became available. I want nothing to do with him. He wants nothing to do with this side of the country. So it's fine. It's not even worth mentioning in an article. And I mentioned just about everybody. But this offseason is going to be weird. Vladimir Tarasenko is available, apparently. There are so many players that are available right now that I did not think would be available. And I don't know if it's money. I don't know if the pandemic changed priorities for players. But, it's not Jack it's not Jack Eichel or bust in this offseason. It's not Dougie Hamilton or bust. There's a lot of availability. And the expansion draft throws a monkey wrench into things. Colorado is in kind of a bad way when it comes to the defensive side because they got to protect Cale Makar, Eric Johnson, Sam Girard, Devin Tays, and Ryan Graves. That's 5 defensemen. They're probably going to have to go for 8 skaters and lose a forward, but they're probably still going to lose a defenseman because they're So I think that we should trade for Ryan Graves. I think he's a very good player that would really work out for our roster. There's a lot of moves to be made, Sam. I think that the Devils are in a position to really move the needle. I know I'm setting myself up for failure and for sadness, but it makes more sense now than it ever did.
Yeah, well, I kind of would like to follow what Sam said before, so stay put, develop these players. The future will need, and this is proper planning, we'll need to pay Jack Hughes. We'll need to pay, more players to stay long-term. One is already long-term, Nico Hischier. We know that for a fact. Defensively, okay, Damon Severson, he's got to, change his game a little bit, not get so unlucky. But what about the core defense that's coming up? Eventually, you're going to have to pay them, after their rookie season and after, a few years. You want to keep the nucleus intact. You got to keep drafting. You want to have that salary cap space to make those big moves at the deadline when you're on the cusp of a cup run. So, right now, I don't think any free agent right now is going to make a difference, a big difference, because there's just so many different issues that the Devils have. I think right now, the only free agent I would take, if it's an unbelievable deal for the Devils, like I'm talking Ray Shero fleecing, Taylor Hall out of Edmonton type deal. But I would only go after a player that brings a winning mindset and leadership in that locker room almost immediately. They're rare. And that's why I say just stay put. Because I think the Devils I think the Devils have the talent. Look at the success Zajac and Palmieri and Green and Blake Coleman they're having on other teams that are managed well and are playing a lot better than the Devils. I don't think talent's the issue. I think the issue right now is you've got a young nucleus, and I think Travis Zajac did say that. Hey, I'm not 25 or under or whatever. Spin it the way you want, but it's a young team. And
your version was much nicer.
Player. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I didn't want to change the subject matter. What I'm saying is they're young.
Yeah. Here's my worry. I look at what's happening in Philly, and it just feels like they've never been able to shake the stink of the process. And I didn't think that was a thing, Sam, but this year it's hard for me to deny the evidence.
Well,
they
can
just
I?
seemed-
Can I? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to make a point about Scott O'Neil.
Make a point, because I was kind of losing where I was trying to like put into words, and the words were escaping me. So make your point. So let me see if I can come off of that.
All right, and this may come off as mean, but one thing I hate about Scott O'Neil stepping down was the press release, because every single Devils press release, like even when Ray Shero parted ways, it's like, hey, we mutually parted ways. No, I think the owner was pissed and needed results. And he was, and he didn't understand what Ray was doing. They had a disagreement. Okay, that's fine.
You don't mutually part ways in the middle of the season. You get fired in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Scott O'Neil thing, and the line that really bugs me is 8 successful years. What? In Joshua Harris and David Blitzer's pockets? Because a fan, I'm speaking from a fan standpoint, this is what the fan wants to hear. After 8 years of trying, we sucked. We got to make a change. That's what I want to hear, right? You want to talk about Scott O'Neil's tenure, okay? We got the league, NBA saying, hey, you need somebody to run this team. Colangelo's go there, which, by the way, one of them had a burner account, which wasn't too flattering, and I'll go even more and say, what happened with the Devils, all that. I think Scott O'Neil did some innovative stuff. Don't get me wrong, but just reading that press release, I was like, he's going to get a job somewhere else. The guy's a smart guy. He knows how to sell. He's a great businessman. It just maybe wasn't the right fit. I don't know. What's that?
He'll probably get a better job with better pay, and that's how it works.
Oh yeah.
And he's an asset on the free agent market.
He just came out with a book. I almost sat on the Zoom call. He did a Zoom call with Ken Danico promoting his book, and I almost went out and paid for it. And then I said, I'm not going to do that because, I'll be one of those jerk fans that asks the question, how come the Devils aren't winning? So I just refrained. But it's just, and when you look at that 76ers tenure, I study that to death. The bottom line is the next guy that's going to be in is going to be very analytics focused, because I think that's what Joshua Harris and David Blitzer have been very successful in the financial markets. Numbers, they are very smart at that. But for hockey, again, we may have a different opinion, Nick, but for hockey, it's more than just numbers. The chemistry of a team, it's a real team concept. It's not like you can get Kevin Durant and, Harden and Kyrie Irving, or I don't really know who's on Philadelphia's team just because I don't care, but the Sixers. But, and you know what? I'm hopeful that the guy or woman that replaces Scott O'Neil knows how to win. Win, baby.
How much impact do you think that position has?
I think it has a tremendous. I think it all starts from the top. I think you know what? Because
do you think there's a problem? Because the Philly thing hasn't worked. And the Devils thing, I don't. The only way I will say it didn't work is that they tried in 2019-20 and failed miserably.
The only reason why the Sixers, and if you want to talk basketball a little bit, the only reason why Sixers made the playoffs is because the Eastern Conference is so bad. All the powerhouses is in the Western Conference.
They were a one seed.
Let's be honest.
You got to give them some credit.
Well, you know what? After so many first-round picks, first overall picks, you should at least have a first seed at some point.
Yeah.
I know I'm being a little harsh here, but again, I just think the entire organization from the top, including the owners, I think there's just a lack of focus. I just don't see a strategy here of winning. I see everything else, great marketing, profitability, social issues, building around the arena, economic, stuff. I mean, that's all great stuff, but let's get back to sports here. And that's where I've always had a problem with it. I've been pretty vocal about it. And again, I'm not saying that Joshua Harris and Blitzer and HBSE are stupid people. I mean, I talked to Hugh Weber over the years, and he's a very smart guy. But here's the problem. They're not hockey people. And letting Lou leave and seeing the success that Lou has had so far. Now, don't get me wrong. Islanders are going to be in cap hell very soon. But you know what? They're winning, and they're actually winning with our former players. You got to look at it from the point of view of the fans. If you want to do a focus group meeting, I'm telling you, I want results. 1 year, 2 years, how many years are you going to give? I'm so interested to see who's the next person that's going to take over. Or is Joshua Harris now leaving Apollo Management, now full throttle on this company? It sounds like does he have a chip on his shoulder?
Sounds like the plan is to replace him.
Yeah.
I would.
But, they're not going to hire me now, even if I send my resume, because I just basically trashed the whole organization. But hey, you gotta point. You gotta understand the problem before you can solve it, right? That's the advice is free. But if you really want to hire me, you know where to find me. Can you imagine me, CEO of Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment? That's hilarious.
As long as you keep promising me that you're going to write that first article for Pucks and Pitchforks while you're the CEO of Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment.
Hey, you know what?
Stringing me along.
Yeah, you know what? I'll keep stringing you along. Anyway, thank you for going to pucksandpitchforks.com.
No, it was huge. It was a huge month. We had a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of great content next month. I got some interesting pieces coming for Pucks and Pitchforks. I literally have a list, Sam, of all the slideshows that I'm going to do. It's like this long right now. You can't even catch it on camera because the top's so high, the bottom's so low. There's going to be a lot of sliders before free agency hits. I've had this one that I've been sitting on for a while, and I haven't written it because it's going to take a lot of work. And the history ones they're hit and miss. I've had some that have destroyed, and I have some that destroy me. But I went through and I picked the 5 years that a Devils player should have won an award and didn't. It's one of the ones that I'm really excited about. So I've always been looking for the right time. I'm going to write it next month. I'm committing. That's going to happen. The obvious one is 2003, but just think around that, where Devils players should have won awards, and they didn't. And that one's going to be a fun one. And I'm going to do a couple fake trades this week. People seem to really like that.
Ooh,
we did a Hurricane one, and we did a Avalanche one. And I try not to go crazy with it. I'm not going to do. Let's do Jack Eichel for Pavel Zacha and a sack of potatoes. I'm going to try to be a little bit.
Be realistic.
I try to be realistic in the ballpark. Things like that. But one that's doing well today. Elliot Friedman reported that the Devils are thinking. We didn't even talk about this real quick before we leave. Elliot Friedman reported that the Devils are shopping the 4th overall pick for a quality defenseman. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, well, remember that leadership thing that I was talking about and long term? An impact player in the locker room. It better be a good one. I mean, it better be. It'd be a Cal McCarr good one.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't do it unless you're getting Quinn Hughes or I wrote a piece of the 5 defensemen that I would even consider with the 4th overall pick that I think could be available. Quinn Hughes is there. I don't think Quinn Hughes is available, but it's fun to talk about. That it's possible. You're not getting McCarr. You're not getting Charlie McAvoy. You're not getting these, players on great contracts or superstars that, Miro Heiskanen, those players like that. So, that's on pucksandpitchforks.com. Go check it out right now. We have a couple other pieces up there too, but pucksandpitchforks.com, and then check me out on Puck Pros. We got a couple other pieces going up this month too there.
Yep. And also, I better get started and write that blog. And also, happy Canada Day tomorrow. Used to be Happy Free Agent Frenzy, but, with the COVID thing, things got pushed back.
Oh.
And also, have a happy 4th of July weekend.
Oh, and Sam?
Yep.
Happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
Thank you. Till
You're
next
in first
time,
place, I can
let's
say it.
go Devils.